Hello everybody, CritCrab here with another story. This one is a double-parter about a player that tried to assume total control of the game not only as one of the players, but also as the DM, and got really whiny when they didn't get their way. Roll post. This is the story of how a PC and DM butting heads eventually led to our group not so spectacularly imploding. Apologies that this post is long. For context, prior to this campaign, I had only played a couple of one-shots to get my feet wet. I hit it off with one of the DMs and we became friends. He wanted to try running a homebrew campaign and knew a couple people that would be interested. It's important to note that the DM was friends with all of us separately and played with all of us separately. We didn't know each other prior to this and had never played together. So the cast of characters, we have the cleric, me, the fighter, the druid, and obviously our DM. In the beginning, our campaign was going really well. Our characters all meshed well and played off of each other's strengths, and we had some really good RP moments. And I was fully invested in the story. Kudos to our DM for making a compelling tale and weaving all of our characters' personal backstories into it. As stated before, I was a new player, and incidentally, so was the druid. Similar to me, she had only played short games. The fighter, however, boasted years of playing D&D and various other RPGs. I only say this to explain why I didn't notice some of the red flags before things got out of hand. I assumed that as the veteran, she knew what she was doing, and this is just how people played. Now, the fighter played a character that was pretty abrasive and stubborn. Generally, I have no issues with characters like that. Like I said earlier, all of our characters managed to get along well, and sometimes this abrasiveness even made for some interesting RP moments. Our characters had some interesting interactions, as my character tended more towards diplomacy, and her way was usually, "F you, I'm right." As time went on, these were less interesting RP moments and more, I actively have a headache trying to deal with this nonsense. Instead of going beat by beat over everything that happened during our campaign, here's a sampling of some of the fighter's behaviors. The fighter at one point or another insulted almost every NPC we interacted with, even the ones we liked. My character worked double time to smooth feathers. Questioned the DM. A lot. Criticized his rulings, quoted the handbook at him, or sometimes just freaked out about encounters if they weren't balanced in our favor. Any chance that her character could die was immediately met with opposition. Fully checked out any scene that didn't feature her character, to the point where she would interrupt us in voice chat to tell us about some video she was watching or some funny meme she had just found. Anything she doesn't care about or doesn't want to make a decision on immediately deferred to my character. When I tried to have a discussion about it, it was just reiterated that she would do whatever my character said. Especially being a full-time player, I was uncomfortable having that much control over the group's decisions. It frankly also didn't make sense for my character to want to be in control of all the decisions. She was very much a team player kind of person. Ended scenes abruptly by leaving, telling us out of character that she was bored with this, or having her character do something so the scene had to end. I love to RP, so this one especially upset me. There were a few times my character was having an intense moment and it was just brushed aside as if it didn't matter, which is hilarious considering the next bullet point. Towards the end of the campaign, she decided her character had a massive crush on mine, which sounds all right on the surface, I suppose, but her character showed no indication that this was the case until one session, late into the campaign. She was suddenly all over my character almost constantly. My character made it obvious, several times in-game, that she was still grieving over the loss of her wife and was not in a place to pursue romance. At least, I thought she did. This point isn't a grievous sin, just something that made me definitely uncomfortable and confused. Leading up to our final bad session, the fighter and the DM had a few tiffs, so the energy of the group was rather contentious, let's say. It's also important to note that prior to having what would be our final session, we had taken a break from the main campaign to join a campaign the fighter DM'd. This went, interestingly. I have some wild stories from this one, and I'll probably write those up eventually. That campaign only seemed to heighten the negative energy between the fighter and the DM. I'll skip all of the plot mumbo-jumbo and jump straight into the incident. Back in our original campaign, our characters are discussing with NPCs how best to break someone out of jail. The druid and I presented a few options that were shut down. The fighter presented an option that was interesting but had a very minuscule chance of actually working. Think all of the planets have to align just so for this plan to work. After being shot down, she stops talking. The druid and I continue to brainstorm with our NPC pals when abruptly, the fighter declares that she is leaving to go do something else. We are obviously caught off guard, especially since we had finally agreed on a plan and were in the process of fleshing it out. The DM, sensing the fighter's irritation, asked if there was something wrong. The fighter responds that yes, she's annoyed that our plans keep getting shut down. She doesn't appreciate the DM railroading us into a decision. I jumped to the DM's defense to say that I didn't think she was trying to railroad us. Rather, the NPCs have more knowledge of the world currently than we do, and they're trying to help us. Plus, he did accept a few of our ideas and we were currently working on fleshing them out. The fighter reiterates that she thinks this is dumb and that her character wants to leave. She feels like everybody thinks her character is stupid because nobody liked her idea. The DM responds that they didn't hate her idea, it just wasn't likely to work, and the NPCs didn't want to stake their only chance on that. The DM finally asks what he can do to make the game better for the fighter, and she tells him to, quote, stop fucking hand-holding us through every problem and maybe I'll have fun. The DM immediately disappears from voice chat. Oh shit, he's definitely upset. The druid and I talk with the fighter to try and figure out what the fuck is going on. The fighter keeps reiterating that we are being railroaded and her character is being made to feel stupid. The druid and I try to explain that we don't feel that way, so it's hard for us to understand why she thinks that. We ask for examples to help us understand, but the fighter just repeats the same thing over and over. Eventually, I leave to just talk to the DM and make sure he's okay. He is definitely not okay. In fact, he's pissed. He rants and raves to me about how the fighter always pulls this shit and he's finally done with this. Apparently, she has pulled similar things in other campaigns he ran. He's not coming back. He never wants to talk to her again and he's just fucking done. I leave the chat with him, rejoin our group, and inform them that the DM is not coming back right now. He's upset, needs some time to cool off, maybe we can reconvene later, but for now he just needs some time for himself. The fighter continues to harp on him, and I just leave. The aftermath. I finally get a chance to talk to the DM after everything cools down and he apologizes for his behavior. He also explains how the fighter's behavior had been slowly grating on him, and apparently the fighter had been equally critical to the DM outside of our game, via calls, private chat, etc. While this incident wasn't a huge deal, it was more the straw that broke the camel's back. I told the DM that he should probably air his grievances with the fighter so that they can try and make amends. He agrees, but he just needs time. I informed the fighter and the druid that the DM just needs time to cool off and he will reach out when he's better. Over the next few days, the fighter becomes increasingly annoyed. She messages our group every day asking for an update about the DM. She says that she's messaged him a bunch of times, but he has apparently blocked her, so she's contacted him through every means possible. Apparently, she's left a ton of voicemails as well. Actually, she's been trying to contact him since the blow-up happened, so much for letting him cool off, I guess. The druid and I reiterate that the DM needs space, just give him time to think. The fighter refuses. She actually told us no, she needs to talk to him right now. How dare he not consider how she feels? Eventually, she realizes that the only way to talk to the DM is through us. So she asks for the druid and I to pass along a message to the DM to stop acting like a toddler, otherwise he's going to lose a friend. She asks us several times over several days, most of which I try to ignore. Not my circus, not my monkey. After ignoring these messages for a while, I finally cave in and tell the fighter that this isn't my fight. I care about both of them, but I don't want to be the mediator or messenger between the two of them. I'm not comfortable being in the middle of this fight, and if they want to talk it out, the fighter needs to wait for the DM to reach out when he is ready. The fighter then blocks me, deletes all of our chats, deletes the server made for her campaign, and disappears into the night. So that's how my first D&D group and first campaign ended. It's been several months since it happened, but I'm still sort of upset about how it all went down. I think the situation definitely could have been handled better on all of our parts, but it is what it is. End post. The fighter in this story sounds like a bully and even a manipulator. While the DM could have benefited a lot simply by talking to the fighter and kicking her if she wouldn't get with the program, these kinds of people can be very hard to stand up to, especially after they have their hooks in you. Would it have been the better thing to do? Yeah. But can it honestly be expected after their assumed history together? Not really. Also, a quick side note, the always angry, abrasive lone wolf type player, when done wrong, is almost as annoying as the edgelord. While it can be charming at first, sure, it gets old pretty quickly if you don't take the time to add any quirks or personality traits other than always pissed, angry, and hates everyone. Anyways, this story is about the fighter's attempt to run a game. Next post. Hello again, lovelies. As promised, I'm back with some stories from my other campaign run by the fighter in the last story. Let's jump in, and again, apologies that I'm long-winded. Our cast of characters for this campaign. The Tiefling Artificer, played by me. The Shifter Wizard, played by our previous DM. The Catgirl Paladin, played by our previous Druid. This was a homebrew race specific to the campaign. So, let's start with some context. Once again, this was a homebrewed campaign. Our DM for this campaign created an entire world that was very rich and full of lore. The reason for this was that she was writing a book set in this universe. I thought, wow, that's really cool. Making your own world is hard and I'm excited to play. To be young. This happened a few months ago. Dumb, still true, and naive. Also probably still true. The world consisted of a few different nations that had the D&D races, as well as some homebrew races. For now, we'll discuss two races, the anime animal people and the technology aliens, which both had real names, of course, but this is more fun. The anime animal people were basically cat girls, bunny girls, cowgirls, yeehaw, etc. Our paladin was a member of this race. The technology aliens were descendants of aliens who couldn't do magic, but instead made really awesome tech that did magic similar effects. That last point is important, as it's the basis of my character. My tiefling artificer was neglected for most of her life. She found a book about the technology aliens and started making inventions like theirs, hence she became an artificer. Now, I'm going to emphasize that she didn't do magic, she built machines. I discussed this with the DM prior to our session 0 to be sure that we were on the same page. The DM agreed. All of my artificer's spells were actually just gadgets that she uses to achieve the same effect, like throwing a grenade instead of casting fireball or something. But again, she does not do magic. Also, just a quick side note, I don't know if this is how everyone runs artificers, but this is what we agreed on for the campaign, as it fit with the lore of the world. There were already characters that could not use magic and instead made tech to imitate magic. So session 0 went great, I had a blast. I was playing a character drastically different from my first. My artificer was basically young, impulsive, could be rather selfish, but just wanted to make friends with everyone. Also, she swore a lot and flipped everyone off, which was just a fun time for me. And whenever I cast a spell, I would explain how I imagined the tech would work. The DM was all for it. We end session 0 with everyone in the same big city. Then we get to session 1. Typically, we had our sessions the same day and time every week. But the day of session 1, I had a family thing and asked if we could delay an hour. The other two PCs agreed. The DM vetoed that decision and just said I could arrive late. Alright, no big deal. I told them to just have my character chill at the base or something until I joined. I sign on about an hour late as expected and everything is chaotic. My party is running all over the city while the DM is posting an ominous countdown in the chat. They try to catch me up to speed while still being productive, because the countdown didn't pause to let me get context for what the was happening. That would be too easy. Basically, here's what happened. Wizard and Paladin met up and Paladin informed Wizard that there was a prince in the city who was trying to assassinate his mother, the Queen, who was also visiting the city. The Paladin knew that the prince had some sort of plan but wasn't sure what. So they investigated and found out that the prince was building a giant mech to destroy the city, I think. Anyway, they warned the queen, and that's when the doomsday counter started. No explanation for why, just a doomsday counter. The two were trying to find the location of the mech when I joined. Now, you must be wondering, but buddy, what about your character? Did she just chill at the base? Haha, no. Apparently, the DM had my character go on her own adventure, with neither of the party members, just by herself. And on that adventure, she fought some cultists and met a, quote, small-breasted cowgirl. Yes, this was her constant description. Who fell in love with my character on sight. Okay? Just a fun little side note here, but after this event, almost every NPC knew that the cowgirl liked my character and not so subtly implied that if my character refused to date her, my character would probably be killed, because this girl was the daughter of an assassin mafia or something. Did my other two party members get a forced romance? Of course not, I'm special. And if you asked yourself, hey buddy, didn't your last campaign have an attempted forced romance with the same player? Yes, it did, but that's probably just a coincidence. Anyway, finally find the location of the mech robot, try to sneak into the warehouse, we're mostly successful. Fight a few baddies, things are going well. Still got like 5 hours on the doomsday clock, by the way. But then we hear the sound of something powering up, and there's a giant boom of energy. Everyone make a wisdom save. I fail. Artificer had comically low wisdom. Wizard fails, Paladin succeeds. The DM gleefully informs Wizard and I that we lose all of our spell slots. Confused, I interject. Me. So wait, you mean magic spell slots? Because I don't cast spells, I use tools. DM. You lost your spell slots, you can't use any magic. Me. Okay, right. But I'm saying I don't use magic, I use tools. So if it's like an anti-magic thing, then I should still be okay. DM. No, you failed the save, so you lose your spell slots. At this point, I don't want to keep arguing because we're getting nowhere, so I just agree. Sure, my tech got scared by the big boom and doesn't want to work anymore. I'll just roll with it. Edit. I've made a comment addressing this point, but I'll put it here too. Yes, I know Raw has artificers as magic users. My confusion came from the fact that in this homebrew world, the technology aliens did not use magic and instead made pure technology to imitate magic. If we used detect magic on their technology, it did not register as magic since my artificer learned her craft from them. I assumed her tech would be the same. If the DM had clarified that I used magic cores or something, or that the magic wipe was also a sort of EMP, I would not have been confused. Anyways, the giant mech thing bursts from the basement and is being piloted by the prince. Oh snap, what drama, what danger, what... Hey, wait a minute, aren't we just level 1? It quickly dawns on all of the players that we are woefully underleveled to handle this sort of encounter, but we don't really have options. The warehouse is located outside of the city. All of our allies are in the city, and we are far enough away that we could not reach them in time. We have no means to contact anyone, and this giant mech thing wants to destroy the city anyway. Guess we're going out in a blaze of glory. Oh, and the doomsday clock? Still counting down. The wizard is slinging cantrips, but the mech keeps absorbing magic. Great. Our paladin is working to cut off its gun arm. It had one grabby arm and one gun arm. While my artificer is trying to smash her way into the cockpit with a hammer. The paladin manages to break off the arm and we all cheer. Hurrah! DM, as the arm falls, you see the gun turn to train on you and begin to power up. Paladin, wait, how does it still have power? I detached it. DM, no, you detached the other arm. Entire party. What? Despite the paladin specifically saying that she was hacking away at the gun arm, you know, the biggest threat, the DM somehow thought she was hacking away at the other arm. When we explained that we all thought she was focusing on the gun arm, the DM just told us no.
Alrighty then.
So I'm trying to smash my way into the cockpit, which has a glass windshield with my hammer, but I'm barely making any progress. Even when I roll a crit, the thing hardly cracks. Oh, and I'm rolling strength checks, not attack rolls. My spaghetti-armed tiefling child shockingly does not have high strength. Eventually, the mech does another big blast and catapults all of us into the water surrounding the city. The mech charges up to shoot a laser at the city. We try to intervene, but the DM says that we're all stunned without rolling to save. The mech shoots the laser. We're all thinking, well, until a giant force field covers the city, absorbs the laser, and shoots it back at the mech. The mech is destroyed and the city is safe. So the session ends, and I realized that we were entirely unnecessary for this whole scenario. The mech was planning on shooting a laser at the city the whole time, and the city always had this defense. We could have done nothing and everything would be fine. Aren't we supposed to be heroes or something? The DM informs us that the countdown was for the technology aliens. Apparently, they were planning on just destroying the whole neighborhood the mech was in to neutralize the threat. The DM also spent several minutes berating us for fighting the mech. DM: you weren't supposed to fight it. I was not prepared for you guys to fight it. Why would you do that? You should have run away. Wizard: but you said it was going to destroy the city. Paladin: yeah, and you told me my character's mission was to stop the prince. DM: but it wasn't supposed to happen yet. Me: but wait, didn't you just tell us the technology aliens would have destroyed the neighborhood if we did nothing? A ton of people would have died. DM: they would not have done that if you had not warned the queen about the assassination attempt. I'm confused, Wizard is confused, Paladin is the most confused because the DM primed her with this mission. So we were supposed to run away from danger, not tell the queen that her son wants to off her, and do what? Spend the session window shopping? I thought it was odd, especially because most players want to play heroes. But little did I know that this was just an omen for things to come. TLDR, party is told that a mech is trying to destroy the city and assassinate the queen. Warns the queen about the assassination, tries to fight the mech. In the end, the party is useless because the city has a magic force field to defend itself. Then the DM yells at the party for trying to save the city. End post. You know how sometimes if a DM is especially railroady, I say that they should write a book? I guess this is what happens when they take that literally. It's also interesting to me that the DM would complain to the party that he was not ready for them to fight the mech after the party was beating it and probably would have continued beating it if not for the DM changing the outcome, all at level 1. Also, DMs that try and railroad the party and then complain when they do anything off the script have little to no idea what D&D is actually about. Telling the party about a problem is usually an invitation to step up and fix it, and with D&D being the creative sandbox that it is, it's not an unreasonable expectation to be able to solve the problem your way. In most games, the experience is enriched by players treading off the beaten path and doing crazy things that the DM did not prepare for. That's where my, and I assume many other DMs, best stories come from. Anyways, if you enjoyed this story, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this one. Till next time.